Thank you everyone so much for tuning in to the Urban Network Podcast. I'm Hewitt, the founder of Amygdala Media, your host. I also organize alongside Melody Rose, the Urban Network networking group. And if you're looking forward to or interested in networking with professionals in the Pacific Northwest, go to urbannetwork.biz to learn more. Today, I'm happy to be joined by Larissa Bodniowycz, who's the founder and owner of Bold City Legal, which is a virtual law firm that helps freelancers, side hustlers, and small business owners. Larissa, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. How are you doing today?
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to be here. I am doing great. I think, as you know, I split my time right now, Oregon and Florida. So I'm currently in Florida, been working and soaking up some sun.
That sounds like a great place to get some work done, outdoors, enjoying the beautiful Florida views. It's
Yes.
amazing.
Inside the air conditioning, though, since it's summer.
Nice.
And looking out. Yeah.
How hot do you think it's going to get there today?
That's a good question. My guess, I think we're going high 80s, but humid. And that's what gets you.
That's what gets you is the humidity. Yeah. That'll add like an extra 15 degrees, I think.
It gets to be oppressive sometimes, but luckily the beach is there and I'm at my parents' house and they have a pool, which I have no complaint about.
That's always a good emergency fail-safe. Is you get too hot, jump in the pool, jump in the beach. Love that. So jealous. Really hope to go camping sometime soon. But enough of that. I'm curious about you. I'm curious about your background and education in law. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into law?
Sure. So I graduated from undergrad and law school from Florida State University out in Tallahassee, Florida. That's the Seminoles. And I graduated law school. I did well in law school, graduated in 2009, which was, as a lot of people probably remember, not the best time in the US or worldwide economy. Had trouble finding a job. And so had a few different law firm jobs and just things weren't quite a fit. So eventually ended up moving out to California, where I took the bar again because I'd taken it in Florida, and ended up doing freelance work for other attorneys. And I know, we at co-working work with a lot of other small businesses, and it seems to be a common route of sort of starting things out of necessity. And that's what happened for me. I did freelance work for other attorneys and then got to the point where I was like, oh, this is a business. I should start treating it like one. So through that, then started my own law firm, where early on I did a lot more work for other attorneys. And now I focus on working with small, I call them modern businesses, but it really just means people that are open to a different way of doing things, to communicating and working completely virtually. And tends to be, I enjoy working with creatives, but there's sort of a broad array of small businesses that I work with to help them with their legal needs on pretty much anything transactional. So really that just means I don't do lawsuit work. It's stuff like contracts, trademarks, copyrights, general, like, hey, Larissa, we're thinking about sending out this advertising. Can you look at it and see if there's any red flags type of work?
Yeah, no, and I just want to mention, because you mentioned that we both do co-working. So Larissa and I, some background, met at Urban Office, which is a great co-working space in South Portland. And there's so many interesting and intelligent business owners here. So it's such a cool community. And it's also where the Urban Network monthly networking group takes place. So if you're interested in a co-working space or networking, definitely check out Urban Office in South Portland.
And I'll echo that. Yeah, I 100% agree with everything you just said.
Yeah, like what's been your favorite elements of working at Urban Office?
I think having people there on those late nights or weekends that really suck if you're working by yourself at home on a laptop. Sometimes just seeing other people, you're one of them, in the office working on the weekends at the same time as you. I really like that camaraderie and the ability to take a 5-minute break and just the energy of other people working on their businesses too.
Totally. It's like, inspirational, but also you're right. Like you can maybe get, wound up sometimes with work, or it's nice to just take a break, talk to some other people, grab some tea or a beer, or just like, just like there's so many nice little atmospheres here that we could like take breaks at and enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you mentioned a little bit about some of the transactional services that Bold City Legal offers. Can you tell me more about like a wider variety or more of the services that you offer through your company?
Sure. So some of the things that are really common for business owners are trademarks, copyrights, and then contracts. Contracts are huge, right? Whether someone's sending out a contract, so marketing agency is a good example, but you're going to probably send contracts to clients. And then businesses also get contracts in. For example, before this podcast, you sent me a release form that I looked at and reviewed before I signed it. So as far as contracts, I help businesses both draft the contracts that they're sending to other people to make sure that everyone's legal rights are protected. And a lot of it's making sure everyone's on the same page. And then I'll also review contracts that other people get and give them advice on, you know, maybe you should try to negotiate this term. Should you sign it? Should you not sign it? Those types of things. So that's really, those are big parts of what I do. And then moving into, there's a big sort of in the legal landscape, there's more and more of a push to make sure that we have appropriate disclosures on websites, things like privacy policies, terms of use that are essentially contracts between you and whoever's on your website. So those types of things. And then I'm moving slowly into doing more legal education. So a big thing I come up against just as a business owner is I'm working with other small businesses who often are on tight budgets, and the view of legal is often, oh, I call legal if I get a nasty letter in from someone, or if something happens, instead of the proactive side of things that can really save a lot of money in the long term. So I just launched a little mini course to help business owners learn more about legal fundamentals. And so that's something moving forward that I feel really passionately about, is helping business owners look at legal as an asset rather than just something, you know, lawyers charge so much money, I'm just spending money. And as a small business owner myself, I get that. We're like, I bootstrap things, and a lot of us tend to be, if I can do it myself, I will. But yeah, that's my latest thing I'm excited about, is doing more on the educational side of things.
Yeah, I think that's a very useful tool. I'm looking forward to dive into your webinar at some point this summer. And I think you're right. It's like, it seems like you offer some also more of like a preventative care, like legal care, you know, like things that people, I'm thinking about it like, you know, working on health instead of going to the doctor when you have a problem. You know, you have a good diet and you run. It's like like something similar with law. You need to have your contracts in place, your processes in place, and then you'll be less likely to run into trouble down the road. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's 100% right. And it's funny you say that. I don't think we've talked about this. That's an analogy I use a lot, is I'm sort of like your primary care physician. Hopefully we don't need to see each other all the time, but you know, once a year, couple times a year, we check in. And then you also, just like having your primary care physician, it's someone that sometimes clients, because I have a relationship with them and I know their business, they can send me a quick email question that I can just answer, and they don't have to go through this whole process of finding an attorney, you know, vetting people, interviewing to answer what sometimes I've sent clients bills for like 20 minutes of work, you know, bills that are well under $100, which people don't think of from legal, but it's easier to have that provider there. And just like with medical, sometimes I help people find the right specialist if there is something unique, but that I have a good big picture view of when it might be needed and worth their money to send to someone, to a different attorney.
It's really good having like an established relationship with like a professional. Like I think of like myself as like a marketing agency. I have clients that often send me just like really short, quick questions about like, you know, new features on like social media and things like that, or, you know, how they could adjust their lighting if they're recording new content. So that's cool that, you know, once people are working with you, they could just, you know, send you an email or a text and get some quick information.
Yeah, and you're then their trusted advisor too.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm curious for any of the business owners that are listening that are, thinking about starting a business, or they're new to owning a business, or maybe they're just a small business in general. What are some like simple steps, maybe like a checklist of things that they could do to protect their business or reduce forms of liability?
Yeah, so thinking about this, and I'll give the quick disclaimer that this is all educational purposes and always consult with your individual attorney licensed in your location. But as a general matter, the things I recommend really early on, the very first thing is start a limited liability company, what we refer to as LLCs. For the majority of businesses, starting an LLC is going to be the right business structure. There's a few exceptions if a business is really built as a startup and looking for funding. Certain professions like law, I can't, in the states where I practice, have an LLC. But overall, a limited liability company is the number one thing most businesses should do. And it does a few things. The biggest, probably the most important part, is it effectively, in the eyes of the law, separates you as a person and your business. The benefit of that is that, say something goes wrong with the business and someone's suing the business, they can only pursue business assets and they can't go after personal assets. So really important, if you have any personal assets, which everyone does, even if we don't have a lot, to make sure those are separate. And I recommend doing it early on, even if the business, if they're a common objection I get is, but I don't make a lot of money yet. And the thought is, well, hopefully you're going into business, you have confidence in yourself, and you are moving in the direction where you will be. And if you don't set this up early, you could still eventually have someone go after your personal assets for something that happened very early on in the business. So that number one thing for most businesses that they should do. And to think of yourself as a business. Even if you're a freelancer, you're running a business. So it often we say freelancer, but really you're a sole proprietor, you're running a business on your own. And then next one, I'll just give you two as a starting point, because I know it can be sometimes overwhelming, is draft contracts and use them, which is a funny thing, but sometimes people have contracts, don't use them, or don't get them signed. But having contracts, it helps even when you have a great working relationship with your clients or customers. It makes sure that everyone's on the same page, and it's sort of like a prenup. If something goes wrong, we have things in place that say these were my obligations, these were yours, and it gives you recourse against the person. And then it also is really preventative. Sometimes, say we decide to work together, I decide to hire you, and you send me your contract, and I go, oh, I thought I was getting 10 Instagram posts a month, and the contract says 5, and you think, oh, you really thought you were just giving me 5 for the price. Then we can talk that through and deal with that just on a practical level before it becomes a legal issue.
Yeah, contracts, as well as being legally binding, are just a great form of communication and like a record on like kind of what your obligations are. And
Exactly.
I know that that's like a big element, or one of the main services that you offer through Bold City Legal is, reviewing contracts, writing contracts. What are like the primary forms of contracts that you see yourself reviewing and writing?
Yeah, so all businesses are a little different, but I call it internal, external. So internal is contracts that you have with people that work in your business. The two big ones, especially early stage business, are going to be independent contractor agreements between the business and contractors, and then employee agreements for people that are actually employees. And then your external facing contracts, the big one is the contract between you as the business and whatever other individual or business that you're doing the work for. And I tend to work with a lot more service-based businesses, but so a service contract, you can really name it whatever, but it's really your client or customer facing contract.
Yeah. I really enjoyed when we sat down together, you offered some consultation services for me and just like kind of gave me a list of contracts that like I myself could look into. including the podcast release form that I sent you before this. So that was like really interesting and useful, getting kind of like a tailored consultation in terms of like contract specific for my business and podcasts and things like that.
Yeah, and I was looking for it and I saw it come through. I was like, good job. On actually
we scheduled.
We
we scheduled this podcast a day later than it initially was planned, and I was like low-key glad because it gave me more time. I was like, oh my god, I haven't done this podcast release form yet, and now I still have time to submit this. So I was going
to give you a hard time about it, but it came through. So way to get it done.
I learned. I know another thing that a lot of people might have questions about is intellectual property, right? That's something that a lot of business owners hear about. Trademarks, patents, things of that sort. Do you think, what do you think about the significance and importance of having intellectual property as a business? Is it like a necessity when you're starting out?
Yeah, so this is something I love, intellectual property. It's interesting and it's always evolving. The cool thing is every business has some form of intellectual property, whether or not they know it. So that's just your intangible, so it's not physical property. The big ones are usually trademarks and copyrights, and then patents come along. Patents deal more with inventions, to oversimplify a little bit, but just by creating things, businesses are developing a little bit of intellectual property protection. By creating a business name and using it in connection with your goods or services, you're gaining a little bit of, like, they call it common law, but like default trademark protection. And then the next question is, what do we do to protect our intellectual property? Is it worth filing a federal trademark for it or a copyright for this information? I think my early stage advice is at least gain an understanding of what the different types of intellectual property are, figure out what your business has, and then evaluate how important it is to the business. To some businesses, their business name and slogan are absolutely crucial. It would create a huge problem if some other business had started using it. Those businesses, a lot of times it is worth filing for a federal trademark. And as attorneys, we do research to give clients an idea of whether it's worth pursuing that application, because sometimes maybe it's already in use and we need to think about if now you're at risk. But I think for most businesses, you have intellectual property, you want to evaluate whether you should register it, which gives you, I'm oversimplifying a little bit, but it gives you a lot more ability to prevent other people, to enforce your right to prevent other people from using it. Most businesses that are at least a few years in, trademarks are generally a good avenue to pursue. Not the filing fees, a couple $100. It takes, right now, I think we're at like 7 months, but hopefully we'll get back to being able to do those in about 6 months.
Yeah, because like if I have a business that like operates on like throughout the nation, and someone else in like, I don't know, Florida or Colorado has something like another Amygdala Media, and we both have numerous social media accounts and been operating for a couple of years, then it's really the person that will have like the trademark, right, that will be protected in that case.
Yeah, there's going to be some nuance to that. Like maybe and we're just using this as an example, maybe if the Florida person, they're operating in Jacksonville, Florida, and they only operate in Jacksonville, and they were in existence before you, they might be able to maintain sort of that territory, but then you've established a national name and otherwise have priority. You'll have priority in the other locations. And the thing about trademarks is there's nuance to it, but as a general rule, the earlier you start thinking about that, the better able you're going to be to prevent other people from using same name, slogan, logo. And then the better equipped you are to avoid the situation where, oh no, I didn't realize this other person actually has a trademark in this name. And now I'm going to get in trouble and have to rebrand and spend all of this money, revamping all my materials, those types of things, or in a lawsuit, which is not where you want to be.
Yeah, so that's a good thing to be thinking ahead of when you're starting a business.
Yes. Thinking
Um,
ahead in law, like it saves you literally thousands to tens of thousands of dollars plus down the line.
So that leads me to like one of the other services that Bold City Legal and yourself offer is legal strategy, which I can only assume is thinking ahead in terms of law, and also legal problem solving as an additional service as well. And I'm curious, what are some examples of some like complex situations where those might come in handy? Or also, sorry for having numerous questions in one questions, but like how would you define those services too?
Sure, that's okay. I always answer in multiple parts. So that's kind of how my brain works, is
Okay, cool.
compound
Thanks.
sentences and questions. But those services are the best I could do to put a name to the work that I do with clients to just help them think strategically in their business. So an example is when I talk to clients, I'm getting information about their current legal state. Do you have an LLC? What kind of contracts do you have in place? Looking at those, but also what they care about, right? In some situations, the thing someone's most concerned about is an employee leaving and, starting up a competing business across the street, but they don't really care about their business name. Okay, that's going to guide what we focus on. In other cases, like we talked about, people really, really care about their name, slogan, logo, and protecting those from a competing business owner using them or something similar. So that's what we focus on. So that's the legal strategy, is it's looking at the business holistically and considering legal, but also what the business owner's preferences and what they care about are. And we're trying to strategically determine where they should put their resources, both as far as, what are your legal priorities to spend on, what things you're not going to get in trouble and you don't really care, what can you kind of let go. So just, I say strategy because we don't just do, we could, but we focus on more than just legal. We really make it tailored to the particular business. And then problem solving, the most common one is, hey, Larissa, I got this in the mail. What do I do? And it's something like a demand letter. Hey, we want you to cease and desist from using this image on your website. Okay, let's take a look at this. Is there merit to what this other person is saying? Sometimes there is. I've had situations where someone inadvertently pulled a stock image just off Google that someone owned the rights to, and then they got a letter that they were infringing on this person's registered copyright. They were. So then we have to problem solve. Okay, I looked at it. You're not in a great place legally. So how are we going to negotiate with this other person? But that's the most common one, is like, hey, I got this letter, or hey, someone else stole my stuff. What can I do now? So just any legal problems that come up. So those two are sort of what I call my like catch-all categories.
Nice. Yeah, it's really kind of impressive, like the array of services, like legal services that like you offer. I'm curious, how can people, like listeners, if they're interested, learn more about Bold City Legal or get in touch with you if they want to, if they have some questions of their own?
Sure. A great jumping off point is the website, boldcitylegal.com. Instagram, which I am becoming active on again. You can hold me accountable on that. And that is at Bold City Legal. And then direct email, info@boldcitylegal.com is a great way to start contact.
And do you want to talk a little bit more about your webinar as well, and like what people can expect from that, and how people could get involved or purchase that?
Yeah, so that is a 5-part, I'm calling it a mini course, but it's 5 videos that viewers can watch at their leisure in their PJs. And it works through the main legal components of running a small business. And the goal of the whole thing is that people come out understanding more about legal, right? Because when we understand more, we can make better decisions on what's worth spending on, where I need to focus, and then also having a concrete to-do list for their business at the end. So, for example, the first day we'll talk about LLCs and other foundational legal requirements. And then at the end, people write down their to-dos. And then on the last day, we bring them all together so that it's not just learning, but there's actionable items at the end. But also, I do believe that just understanding some basics, what a contract is, what a trademark, copyright, patent, right of publicity are, can help business owners make better legal decisions. And I also give my own honest input on when you should you use a lawyer? Should you use a template? Should you DIY it? Because I think that's a reality of a decision business owners are making frequently. And I'll give you a little insiders. I don't always say attorney for everything, but we talk about that. So the goal is really that either business owners have a to-do list or they go, wow, I'm in really good shape from a legal standpoint.
Nice. Yeah. So they kind of take some inventory maybe about what they have already, to help them move forward from a legal standpoint.
Yeah, exactly. And it's easier than just I think a lot of businesses intuitively know, oh, legal is a part of running a business, but it gets pushed or they don't even know where to start. So this is where to start. And then they can make decisions on how they want to carry out their legal to-do list.
Awesome. I literally cannot wait to dive into that mini series. It sounds so useful. And, I definitely pushed off a majority of, or a decent amount of legal elements. So I'm excited to kind of have a more holistic approach towards legal moving forward with my own business. And I hope this podcast helps other people do the same.
Yeah, I'm excited for you too. It feels good when you get those things done.
It does. Even just getting started with podcast release forms, it just felt really good to have that asset just available for me to send to future guests, for instance.
Yep. And you don't have to do it again. It's done. So good job.
Thanks. Before we kind of end the podcast, is there anything else that you want to share with the audience? Any other thoughts or anything that you wanted to say before we get off here?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. I think just like a pep talk for small businesses, which is just keep on keeping on, and that we all go through rough highs and lows in our business, and points where you're overwhelmed with having too many clients, points where you're like, oh my God, is anyone ever going to hire me again? So I think just the feeling of hey, I get that, keep going. We're all there sometimes, but and small businesses are awesome. So I want to be able to continue to use them and to be one. So yeah, just that.
Yeah, we are. I think that's an inspiring sentiment to end the podcast on. Larissa, thank you so much for coming on the Urban Network Podcast. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Of course. And everyone, thank you so much for listening. Have a great day.